Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Saline City Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, January 26, 2022. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In attendance tonight is Chairperson Fosdick, Vice Chair Heft, Secretary Treasurer Carroll, Mayor Morrow, Councilmember Gearbaugh, Staff Rep Police Chief Hart. We have Commission members Beardsley and Young. We also have with us tonight Mr. Lewan. We have City Engineer Humphreys. I pronounced that right, very good. And we have City Attorney Forshee, along with Deputy Clerk Ritchie. There is a motion to approve the agenda as distributed.
So moved.
Second. It has been moved, Morrow, seconded Hart, to approve the agenda as amended, as distributed. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. There is a motion to approve the meeting minutes of December 8, 2021 as submitted.
So moved. Second.
It has been moved Heft and seconded Young to approve the meeting minutes for December 8, 2021. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before we get to citizen comments, I think this would be a appropriate time for me to introduce City Engineer Humphreys, Tesha, who's been with us, are we 2 months into your tenure now?
A few months now, November 1st.
November 1st,
Almost-
okay, so actually
almost 90 days.
a little bit more than 2 months. So she comes to the city of Saline with extensive municipal and private sector experience. She's also a city resident. And I have found her in these past 2.5 months to be extremely competent, diligent, thorough, and proactive. And so for the time being, she is the staff liaison to the Planning Commission. I'm sure she will do a wonderful job, and I think each one of you will enjoy working with her. We're delighted to have her on board. On behalf of the Planning Commission, we welcome you here this evening.
Well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Citizen comments. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at any time and make comments. The person is requested but not required to state their name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and this citizen comment period will be limited to a total of 45 minutes.
Hello, members of the Planning Commission. Can you hear me through the mask?
Yes.
Perfect. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Rob Zimmer. I'm a proud Saline Area Schools graduate, as well as the manager of licensing and government affairs for Skymint Brands. We're a cannabis company based in Michigan, headquartered in Ann Arbor, just down the road on Ellsworth and State. I'm here tonight to comment on agenda item 22.3. I just wanted to introduce, like I said, Skymint as a company to yourselves. Like I said, we're headquartered in Michigan, Ann Arbor specifically. We have our primary cultivation facility in Diamonddale, Michigan, just outside of Lansing. We are vertically integrated, which means we control everything from seed all the way to sale. This allows us to ensure that our product is of the highest quality and safest standard for our consumers. In addition to that, we have 15 stores across the state of Michigan. We're bringing on 2 new stores next month alone in Kalamazoo and Muskegon. In addition to that, on a personal note, as I mentioned, I grew up in Saline. Oh, let me backtrack. Rob Zimmer, address 9359 Barron Way, here in Saline. Personal note, grew up in Saline. My parents still live in the community, and when I moved back to Michigan recently for this job, was living in Saline for a couple of months there as well at my parents' house. So I recognize what a unique and special community Saline is, and I think that Skymint is the type of cannabis company, if you do decide to opt into adult use, is the exact type of company that fits the nature and makeup of the community. That being said, I wanted to thank you guys all for the work that you are doing at the local level to handle the intricacies of what does local cannabis look like in your community. The state really took the easy work of it's good to go, and all the heavy lifting's on you guys. So I appreciate the work you're doing to get to this point if you do decide to move forward with it. If you do decide to open up an application period, Skymint Brands would be looking forward to applying just as any other candidate. And I know that based on our 15 stores that we have across the state, we are a quality business partner partner, excellent community steward, and a quality source of tax revenue, which is, one of the most important things at the municipal government level. So I wanted to offer a tour of any of our facilities in the Lansing area. We also have a retail facility in Ann Arbor off South Industrial Road. If anybody on the commission is interested in setting up an official tour, please get a hold of me. If you have any questions on our company or the cannabis industry in general, please feel free to reach out to me. Just wanted to say thank you very much for your time and appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to public hearings. 2201, we have an application from Damian Farrell of Damian Farrell Design Group, PLLC, for a combined preliminary final site plan for a condominium development, the Leslie, of 30 units that totals 56,733 gross square feet and 32,048 square feet of parking area for 87 new parking spaces located on 207 Monroe Street, Saline, Michigan, 48176. Parcel number 18-1801-170-015. We have reports from Mr. Lewan. Would you like to start up?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. So this is a project that probably looks familiar to the Planning Commission. This project was formerly known as the Faraday Project. It is essentially an identical project to what the city approved back in September of 2019. The applicant has had to reapply because the 1 year since, site plans have 1 year before an applicant is required to pull a building permit, and they passed that time, so they have to resubmit. So the applicant essentially has resubmitted, from what we can tell, an almost identical site plan from what was approved previously. That site plan is for a condominium project on approximately 4 acres of land with 38 dwelling units. If you go through our review, you can see that because we've reviewed this in the past, and we, of course, reviewed it again to make sure it met all the city standards. If you look at the area width, height, and setbacks, that's like, what we call the bulk requirements. We have no issue with the setbacks. There is one note discrepancy that the applicant will have to address prior to them starting. There's a total square footage that's mentioned in one part of the site plan that is identical to what was approved previously. Then there's another square footage that's a little bigger, and I'm assuming it's just a typo, but that should be clarified. With regard to natural resources, there are really no significant natural resources on site. There are some trees that will have to be removed. I know some of the trees have already been removed on site. Other than that, we're not talking about a site that has significant wetlands or steep slopes or things like that. Building location, site arrangement. For multiple family projects, we have a little different standards where we have distances required between buildings. Typically for a single family lot, you have front yard, side yard, rear yard setback. For multiple family buildings, we have the setbacks that we say, that the ordinance calls out as front to front, end to end, end to side, and those are designed to keep, some distance between the buildings. Kind of similar if they're on a lot, similar to a setback. They have met all of those, so we have no issue, but I just wanted to mention that. With regard to parking and loading, the applicant is providing 87 total parking spaces where 66 are required. Those 87 parking spaces include garage parking, driveway parking, as well as a 8-space, we say 9 in our report, but I recounted it, an 8-space visitor parking lot as well. So, so that gets them to 86 spaces, but still they're about 20 over what we would normally require for a project like this. So we have no issue with the parking and loading, and obviously it's very similar to what we had seen before. Site access and circulation hasn't changed. Landscaping, page 5 of our report, the applicant has done a nice job with their landscape plan. The only thing that we mentioned that the planning commission has to make a determination on is for the little 8-space visitor parking lot. There's supposed to be some parking lot perimeter landscaping that's primarily developed to block headlights from, shining onto adjacent homes or adjacent areas. And the applicant has indicated that they would like the screening that is being proposed to screen this development from the adjacent property. This would be on the north side of the site where that little parking lot is. So they would like to use the screening landscaping that's required for the property to the north to count as the perimeter parking lot landscaping. We don't have a problem with this substitution or this waiver. The Planning Commission has the ability to grant this kind of waiver if you believe that what the applicant is proposing will meet the intent of the zoning ordinance. But that is something that the Planning Commission will have to put into your motion if you want to allow that to happen. If not, they will simply have to add some additional landscaping along the edge of the visitor parking lot. On the site plan, you may have noticed that there's a proposed boulder retaining wall on the site. That will have to be reviewed by the city engineer, as well as the ordinance actually indicates to be reviewed by the code official, but I would guess the code official will ask the city engineer to review that. So that would, that could be done, of course, prior to the start of construction. I don't think that's a deal breaker, but it is something that's required by ordinance. The only other thing that the applicant will really have to change on the site plan is the lighting plan. There's along one of the adjacent residential property lines, the lighting level is shown at a little over 2-foot candles. And when you abut residential property, the lighting level can only be 1/2 of a foot candle. It's on page 6. We actually say 1/100th. It's a 1/10 of it. It'd be 1/2 a foot because it's a 0.5, not 0.05. That was a little typo on our part. But in any event, it's 2.1 and it can only be 1/2. So they have to reduce lighting in that location. Again, that's something that usually can be done either with an adjustment of the light fixture itself or some shielding on the light fixture or a different type of fixture. So again, it's not going to change the layout or anything like that, but that's something that would have to be addressed prior to them starting construction. Signage will be addressed in a separate application to the city. The applicant has provided floor plans and elevations. And with regard to utilities and stormwater management, we indicate here that those should be deferred to the city engineer, DPW director to review to ensure that the underground water main, sanitary, and storm systems are meeting city standards. As far as the planning part of this goes, we do recommend approval of the proposed combined site plan. After making a determination regarding the proposed parking lot perimeter landscaping by the Planning Commission, and that the other items of this review have been addressed to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. The only other thing that really has to be done besides the landscaping is from a direct planning and zoning perspective, is the lighting plan has to be adjusted slightly. And then those other items I mentioned, which have to be reviewed really by the city engineer. So with that, again, we would recommend approval. This is almost an identical site plan to what the city had approved back in 2019. And if there are any questions about any of the planning or zoning issues, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Any questions for Doug? We also have a report from OHM. Tessa, do you want to comment on that? If you would.
Sure, I'd be happy to. There is a review letter from OHM, and it's been previously stated, since this is basically a resubmittal of a site plan from 2019, the conditions actually in OHM's letter were shorter than were in previous. A lot of things had been addressed from the previous submittal. So the engineering review typically looks to make sure that the site is developed enough that the final construction plans aren't going to affect your plan view layout. We still need construction plans for proposed utilities, water and sanitary, and at this point, OHM has found the plans have been addressed enough to the satisfaction of, like I said, the site plan approval phase, noting, as was already stated, there's multiple items that still need to be, permits need to be pulled for water main, proposed water main and sanitary sewer, and other things in, construction plan review phase.
Thank you.
That's it.
Any questions for Dean?
Just one, regarding looking at soil erosion, not soil erosion, but stormwater management and so forth. I mean, currently, the way the layout is, it appears that the water is not going anywhere. Is that the problem of the system as it is right now? And is that going to be addressed in the future?
So, as far as the proposed detention pond?
Yeah,
Or
right
the-
now, it looks like it's just it holds a lot of water. And I thought it was going to be a detention, not a retention pond, so.
So I have not dived into these calculations. OHM has dived into all the calcs and all the previous submittals on this. I agree with you, when I looked at the site, like all developments, I think there's a lot on this site. But the proposed pond, my understanding, has been designed in accordance with Washtenaw County Drain Commission standards, which are the city's current standards. And we, of course, use the older Washtenaw County standards. I couldn't tell you the exact date of those, but so this has been designed and signed off by OHM. If there are additional concerns with the stormwater system, I can look into that further. I have not dug into these calculations.
That's fine. My question being that we are at 100, but we're using a 100-year floodplain now versus a 500-year storm, I guess I'm trying to say. But we
do
can't
have
make-
outdated standards, I agree. That's one of the top things, if I can go off top of it, but one of the things I'd like to get done in the engineering department is updated design standards. Our design standards just need updating. So we are currently, this though has been designed per our current standards and has received OHM's review and approval of that.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Any other questions?
If I can modify, there is a minor modification. There's a condition of approval in it, but it's minor. I don't want to get into the details, but there was a minor thing in the orifice holes as one of their conditions of approval, but it wasn't, I viewed Dean's picture as Dean's question is more overall big picture, not specific to the minor comment one on.
No, you're correct. It's more wondering what we're doing in terms of when these come up and we have a 500-year
Yes.
idea of flood now and versus 100, when we would address and adjust that based on if there are current standards that are already out there that we need to adapt.
Yeah.
Sounds like that's what we need to do. Thank you.
And also, I should mention, yes, being new, I'm not coming quickly with some of the answers, but the current standards also do require, though, that you have a couple additional best management practices. And my understanding that has been met here, maybe with a rain garden, I'd have to dig into the site a little bit. There was a couple locations of best management. So our current standards require the Washtenaw County, the older, because our standards are just older, plus these two best management practices. But I completely agree with you, Dean, that looking long-term, that needs to be updated. And there's, we have areas of our storm system that are clearly identified as overcapacity. Where this discharges is not one of the major ones from my recent review of our assets in the storm system, but as an overall, it is a concern. The capacity of our overall storm system is a concern. So that I agree with. I don't know if that's what you're asking either.
Partly, but that's
Yeah.
kind of the thing. When we look at these now, and this has been 2 years since really was reviewed, all the concerns have come up with the idea of all the flooding and stuff that's happened in Detroit and all those concerns, and just making sure that we're starting to look in a different direction as we do this.
Right, yes.
Thanks.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Just to piggyback on that, I think Engineer Humphreys and I have had this conversation, I think, very early on in her tenure, subsequent to a SEMCOG conference that Councilmember Seo and I attended. But SEMCOG has quite a bit of data and analysis on this. the recommendation moving forward is to strengthen your stormwater management standards. There are, let me be very clear, based on the analysis, there are no 100-year rains anymore. Those are 10-year rains. Those are happening now every decade. So the conference was primarily focused on stormwater management, and the takeaway was, don't skip on your standards, strengthen them. It will benefit your businesses, your private property owners, your homeowners, and your community as a whole.
Yes. And so absolutely, I completely agree with that.
Bill?
Just to follow up for Mr. Luan, actually, the lighting concern and the landscape, is the concern the neighbors on the property or the neighbors off the property?
Off the property.
Off the property, okay, thank you.
It'd be mostly those homes on Henry Street, I would believe, that you want to kind of.
Just a question, going forward about the water main. If we're installing water main, we're assured that the Faro property will not be a dead end, correct?
I'm
Because
sorry,
I know
that
we're having a lot of issues with dead ends.
that won't, that there's no dead ends, is that what you?
Yes.
That's on my list for the revised design standards. So right now, no, we do not have a standard. That is not a standard in place right now. Our engineering standards are from 1994 and need to be updated. And that's one of the top priorities on my list. It's a tool I need to do my job. So but as far as, so the water main for this site, no, it's actually under the road. It's in a smaller, I mean, the road is not that wide. There's or not houses, buildings on both sides of the road. The easement, I think, was maybe only 18, it was just enough. So it fits. And it did get approval again before, and the previous engineer had signed off on some of the conditions, small things like being under pavement and such. So that is something I think we could use more of, loops, I agree. But this development, or this particular plan has been developed or for our current standards.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the report.
Mr. Chairman, Tesha, did you have anything else on your separate memo dated January 21st?
No, I kept it very brief just because of the,
Sorry.
I think we've gotten it, yeah, just due to the, it was a previous site plan that actually came in addressing all of the conditions from before as far as engineering were. So as presented as just a final site plan approval, it came in with very few comments of condition, again, because it's already been, they've addressed them all, with only, of course, the condition being we need final construction plans to do just what, get the water main, the storm, and the sanitary built and permitted and all those things.
Thank you.
Before we entertain the motion to acknowledge receipt, I just wanted to acknowledge, because Attorney Forshee is here, and while it's been some of his associates at Dickinson Wright who primarily worked on this issue, or this project rather, I wanted to provide him the opportunity to speak if he had any insights or thoughts.
Yeah, like you said, some of my colleagues have worked through some issues on this site, but unless there's any specific questions, I don't have anything else to add at this time.
Great, thank you. Okay, there is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the report dated January 12, 2022 from City Planner tonight, Luan, and memo dated January 11, 2022 from OHM Advisors, and a memo dated January 21st, 2022 from City Engineer Humphreys.
I'll move to acknowledge receipt, Mr. Chair.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded heft to acknowledge those. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. All right, is there somebody from the project that would like to make comments concerning it? Okay,
Move to open the public hearing.
Second?
there's a motion to open the public hearing, moved Beardsley, seconded Gearbaugh. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, ayes have it. Any public comment from anybody?
Move to close the public hearing.
It's been moved Mayor Morrow, seconded Heft, to close the public hearing. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Any more questions, comments from Planning Commission? Dean, go ahead, please.
I guess my question would be, considering some of the legal ramifications regarding this property and the sale and everything, moving on this motion, how is that being addressed? And could our attorney give us advice?
Yeah, so I think, there's an outstanding development agreement that's being worked through. And so I think we wanted to give the applicant an opportunity to address the board if they wanted to. And, but it would probably be premature at this time to actually act on the site plan review. Because, we're still working through the development agreement. And so there's some issue as to what stage we are in the ownership as it applies to this property, because we have an option to repurchase, and we're still working through that with the developer. So it was our recommendation that we hold off on action on this, but instead but we still reached out to the attorney for the developer and offered to have them, speak if they wanted to, and still hold the hearing, but to postpone action on this until we can resolve the development agreement.
Is there a motion for that?
I'll actually make a motion, if I could comment. Because I think it will still take some time to work through a development agreement, and I'm not sure when that process will be completed. I actually think tonight it would be more appropriate to move, and I will move to table the issue until a later date.
Second.
Postpone, you could do to a date certain. I don't have a date certain.
Yeah, I don't think we do we, Mr. Forshee? We're not in
No,
negotiations?
we don't, because we're still, again, we're not quite sure. We have had recent contact with the council for this developer, and they have promised to move swiftly. And so we don't have a date certain right now.
So with tabling, as you know, Mrs. Heft, it just requires at a subsequent meeting when we're able to take it up, that first you have to entertain a motion to take from the table. Then, assuming that passes, then the matter can be discussed, debated, and subsequently voted upon.
If we elect to take it from the table.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go with that.
So let me get this straight. The motion is to take it off the table.
No, to
No,
table the matter.
Table the whole matter,
Yep.
okay? And Brian made that motion. Is there a second? Second, Young.
Let me just add, Mr. Chairman, like Mr. Forshee said, no disrespect meant to Mr. Farrell or his associates, but this project has lingered for a bit. And so we are trying to negotiate in good faith to put this appropriate safeguards in place to ensure that this project moves forward expeditiously, and that there are certain safeguards in effect in the event that it stumbles or fails. So I know that staff, legal counsel, and the city manager are working diligently on that, and we hope to be able to report out and have something substantive in the not-too-distant future.
Mrs. Heft.
And just to clarify to the other commission members, that laying it on the table puts it there until we would bring it back. If we never bring it back, then it stays on the table.
Correct.
Bill.
Site planning purgatory?
You can use tabling essentially as a tactic to never formally to kill something without formally taking action.
So if I were summarizing this, I would say our engineer and our planning consultant addressed strictly from the context of the site plan, without regard to maybe some of the legal statuses of the project, and based upon beyond that site plan work, sort of assessing the right timing of things. So from a planning commission standpoint, some of this other stuff is sort of news to us in terms of where the status is, but we'd be well advised to table it until you work through it. Got it.
Dean?
And just one thing, in doing this avoids turning on the clock too, doesn't it?
Right.
In terms of the site plan, turning on the clock, so that if we approved it tonight, then you'd have to come back in a year and we'd be in the same boat again as expiring or
I would like to say we did tell council for the developer that this was the recommended plan of action, and for the reasons that we're all talking about right now, and they understood, and so I think that's the expectation as well. But we hope to move that development agreement swiftly so that it should return to you in short order.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any more discussion? Although, pardon?
There's no discussion.
All right, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. So we move on to the next item. All right, we'll go to 2202, it's a zoning amendment, creating ordinance number 834, an ordinance to add adult use marijuana establishments to certain zoning districts and define the process of each. We have a memo from Mr. Luan.
Yeah, we were given this, these ordinances to take a look at. We really didn't, the one we're talking about right now is the marijuana ordinance. We really have no issues with what's being proposed. The only thing, there was maybe a slight numbering issue, but other than that, the content, we have no issue with what was proposed. So we're fine with, we have nothing to contribute at this point.
And Mr. Chair, I did look at that numbering. I think I believe it is accurate, but the confusion might have come in that the medical marijuana numbering hasn't hit the Muni code yet, hasn't been updated. So perhaps they were looking at the outdated version. So, but I think the numbering is correct. Is that what the issue was?
That was it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Dean?
A question came up, and I'm trying to, it would be on the, numbers on the page, section 22-93, regarding the co-location of adult facilities versus a medical marijuana provisioning center. This one says, notwithstanding anything to the contrary, no retailer shall be located within 250 feet of a medical marijuana provisioning center. Is that a state requirement, or is that something we came up with? Because some individuals understand that there could be the potential of co-locating a medical and a retail at the same location or within the same vicinity, but this reads that wouldn't be the case, if I'm interpreting it correctly.
Yes, let me just catch up to you on the page here. 2293.
The second paragraph, just underneath the 4 types of establishments.
Yeah, so we did talk a little bit about this with Mike before he left, and with Katrina as well. Yeah, so as it stands right now, no retailer, which is the adult use version of a provisioning center. It's the similar type use. It's the use that faces the public and where sales are made. As it stands right now, no retailer would be located within 250 feet of the provisioning center or another retailer. We did talk about, and what I think you're asking is there a chance for co-location of a retailer and a provisioning center together, or is that?
Possibly, yeah, that too.
Yeah, I don't think that is allowed to mix the provisioning center with a retailer. It would also be really uncommon. The one thing we were looking to address, because you just recently had some medical provisioning center applications come in, and you hadn't for quite some time, so we didn't really have to think about existing facilities. But now we have a couple in the pipeline that I've been working with Katrina on. And so there may be some slight tweaking to the regulatory ordinance just to make it clear that a provisioning center could convert into a retailer. And that's really the way the industry's going. And probably, I predict that with the adult use or recreational, the demand for the medical provisioning centers will be much less just because of the business model. And that's what we've seen from experience over time. So I'm not sure, did that answer your question?
Sort of, but I guess the question would be is that we would basically have to have a provisioning center turned into a retail, or that's the expectation you're thinking of. You couldn't have within 250 feet a provisioning center and a retail together. So the idea is we're keeping them separate with the intent that one would convert into a retail.
Yeah, in fact, under state law, I don't believe a medical provisioning center can be in the same building as a recreational.
That came up as a discussion point today during a meeting, and we were looking at this and wanted to clarify that because of those applications that are coming in. There may be an expectation that might happen, or a desire for that to happen.
Mr. Chair, I seem to recall from the code review committee that the 250 feet was really more to keep multiple dispensaries or retailers from being close to each other. I don't remember it being specifically targeted towards the medical component. I'm wondering if we have some text issue in the ordinance.
It may be something to investigate.
Yeah, and that is in the regulatory ordinance. Just and I know it's good to discuss all these issues together because they're really interlinked. But yeah, we can look into that. But as far as I think the goal was a provisioning center and a retailer are basically similar. It's the clientele they can serve, and there's some other different regulations they have. But as far as land use goes, they're similarly situated. And so, we didn't want to have a provisioning center next door to a retailer, next door to a provisioning center, next door to a retailer. So whichever configuration that is, we just wanted to keep those uses away from being next door to each other. I believe that was the intent.
Yeah, and I think that was the intent.
As it's written, wouldn't it doesn't seem to prohibit two retailers being next to each other, but it prohibits
it would.
A retailer and a medical from being next to each other. Provision.
No, it says a retailer or another retailer. Let me pull that up.
It doesn't say that. That's what it probably should say.
On my version, I have notwithstanding anything to the contrary, no retailer shall be located within 250 feet of a medical marijuana provisioning center as licensed pursuant to the Act or another retailer.
Thank you.
Nor within 1,000 feet of.
Okay. Brian?
Is that the same? Is that the same on your copy? Okay, good.
Tom, Mayor Marl here. I apologize because I've looked through this a couple times and I must be missing it, so I apologize for being obtuse. Similar to the ordinance that we have adopted pertaining to medical marijuana establishments. This does not permit retail establishments in the downtown districts. Is that correct?
Correct. It allows it anywhere only where a provisioning center would be allowed.
Okay.
So it mirrors the medical exactly.
So those districts we set up for the medical, this would apply?
Yes.
Perhaps then I could ask, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
a question of a voting member then of the Code Review Task Force, which of course Mr. Beardsley is the liaison from this group. Mr. Beardsley, do you recall the logic behind excluding the downtown from retail establishments?
You know, there was a number of discussions, some of which involved Honeyfield, some of which involved what we wanted in downtown specifically, and what we didn't want in downtown. And I think the spirit of the discussion was primarily to align it to the existing medical sort of definitions and geographies would be the easiest way to move forward. Okay. So there were certainly some committee members who felt like including downtown made sense, and some that felt like it did not make sense.
Fair enough.
Dean?
And just another question, co-locating a retailer with a growing facility or a processor or any of the other types of facilities we mentioned, is that allowed? Say you had a large parcel and you put a retail on it, but you also put a processing center or something like that?
I believe that is prohibited, and under our ordinance, since things are located in different districts. So no, I don't think that's a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The only other little consideration that's different in recreational than it is in medical is that there's a thing called a micro business, and that's kind of like this vertically integrated all-in-one, where there can be a grower and a retailer, but they're limited as to size, so it can't be like a huge grower and then a retailer, but it's where it's all contained in one. But the code review task force thought at this time they didn't want to allow those, so those are prohibited in the current version. That's something you could consider in the future, but I just wanted to let you know because that's one different kind of facility that's contemplated by adult use, that's not in the medical world.
Thank you.
Any more questions, concerns? Okay, there is a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated January 21st from City Planner Luan.
Second.
It's been moved Heft, seconded Young, to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated January 21st, 2021 from City Planner Luan. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. We have a motion to open a public meeting.
So moved?
It's been moved Gearboss, seconded Heft, to open the public meeting. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. All public comments to be heard, limited 3 minutes per person. So there you go, Mr. Zimmer.
Hi, everybody again. Rob Zimmer, 9359 Barron Way. Again, my job with SkyMint is Manager of Licensing and Government Affairs, so the question about co-location is actually exactly my wheelhouse. Just a little bit of industry insight. We are allowed to have both a provisioning center license and a retailer license for adult use, as far as the state is concerned, at the same location. In fact, some municipalities up until recently, did require us to hold both a medical and an adult use license in order to operate adult use. So I don't know if that offers some insight. Again, as we can all see tonight, cannabis is a very new, tricky, and difficult industry. So we are happy to be here to help navigate those tricky things, offer insight, and then again, anybody wants to see a tour of our facilities to kind of see it up close and personal, to counter any of those misconceptions, we'd love to have you. So thank you very much.
Move to close the public hearing, Mr. Chair, at 7:47.
Second.
It's been moved, Mayor Morrow, seconded Heft, to close the public hearing. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Comments, questions from planning commission members? What's on your mind?
I'll just put in my 2 cents in terms of sort of context of rule here as I see it, and this came through code review, and as I mentioned before, there was diverse opinions in terms of, whether Saline is well-suited, well-served by allowing cannabis or different kinds of cannabis businesses. I was one that felt like it was an opportunity for Saline to differentiate itself by saying no to cannabis dispensaries. But I don't think that's our role here. Our role is recommendation to the council in terms of if the council is going to approve it, because planning commission doesn't really approve it, where should it be located? So that's a different question At least that's the way I see it. And I think that's the question we're asked is, you know, less about whether you like it or whether you want it, but rather if it's here, where it should be here. That's just sort of my editorial perspective.
Thank you. Dean?
I just want to make sure we don't have any kind of ambiguity with state laws versus local and co-locating and what we were just discussing in terms of that aspect, the way that it's currently written in this ordinance, so that we would have a difficulty enforcing it. And now, Tom, you talked about it a little bit, but I'm kind of hesitant on this because I don't know if we really have something we can recommend that's clear.
Well, that part is in the regulatory. Now, what I was saying is I don't, and I might have to do some more research on this, but they may have both permits, but my understanding is they couldn't operate both at the same time. But if I'm incorrect on that, I'm happy to research that issue. But as far as the recommendation to council, that would just be the zoning ordinance portion, which it just locates the facilities in the different, or establishments in the different zoning districts, and that were discussed.
More comments? Okay, there is a motion to recommend to adopt or not adopt. What's your pleasure?
Of course, folks, if you feel you'd be more comfortable letting Tom do some research or mulling this over for a couple more weeks, you can certainly move to postpone it for 2 weeks.
Next 2 meetings out.
I move to postpone, to get some clarity about the provisioning center and the growers, the dual licenses, if they can be at the same place. It seems that Mr. Zimmer thinks that some of the language might be a little incorrect, so I motion to postpone, recommending this to council.
I'll second that motion.
Yep, Miss,
We gotta pick a date.
Yep, yep.
So let's go February 16th, which is a good month out.
We have the 9th or the 23rd.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at a wrong date. Yep, 23rd.
Let's go for 23rd.
I'll support that.
Okay, there has been a motion by Ms. Young and Dean Gearbox. Katrina, did you get that motion? So we're all okay.
it's February the 23rd.
February 23rd.
Okay.
All those in favor, any more discussion? I'm sorry. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. All right, we move to 2203, which is zoning amendment, creating ordinance number 836, an ordinance to amend Appendix A, zoning, Article 12, sign regulations. Let's see here. There should be a memo from Mr. Lewan.
Yep, this was a kind of a twofer, so there's two subjects on the same memo, the January 21st memo. Again, we were asked to take a look at the work of the city attorney with regard to the proposed revisions to the sign ordinance. We have no real issues with the sign ordinance aside for a couple of locations where it still appears that there is some description of the type of sign, so some description of content that certainly no attorney, that's why we just raised this for the planning commission and perhaps for the city attorney to address. Specifically, the big one is the on-site, off-site signs, and the use of the terms on-site or on-premise, off-premise signs. Again, not an attorney, but I think there's some recent court action that was not in favor of a community that had that described signs like that. The thinking is that you have to, it is a content-based sign because you have to determine if it's an on-site sign or an off-site sign. As my personal observation, as ridiculous as that sounds, I work in another community where this very specific ordinance language was in another sign ordinance I work in, and a sign billboard company came in, and the community has a nice new billboard after they lost a lawsuit because of this language. Nice new billboard on I-94. So otherwise, we have no issue. It's just that, that obviously the idea is to remove the content-based language, and this was the one that struck me just because I've recently been involved in a case where a city or the community was nicked for having a sign that they were calling on-site and on-premise, off-premise signs. So there could be a reason or some context that the city attorney can explain, but we were asked to review this ordinance, and that's our primary observation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Luan?
I'm going to have a couple questions about some of the wording and stuff that's in this, and the prohibited type of signs. Would we be prohibited from excluding or including the prohibition of vertical banners? I mean, the whole definition of those things they're taller than whatever we allow in our regular signs generally. They're a nuisance. They're a traffic hazard. The fact that we ban things like pennants, beacons, portable signs, roof signs, I don't see why, if we could ban those type of signs too. It isn't the type of sign that we're not allowed to, it's more the content that we have to worry about, if I'm correct, right?
Yes. But you might want to ask the attorney that question, since he'd put together the language. But it would seem to me you could.
And those type of signs have proliferated in the last 2 years, and it's getting to the point where everybody's got them, and it's a workaround. So at this point, my hope would be is to add that as a potential prohibited sign. But I didn't know if that's too specific a type of sign, or if we can identify that as a specific type of sign.
I think we could identify that as a specific type of sign. We could limit the size, and we're not talking about the content. And I can address the content question when you want me to, but
If I may, the vertical signs, if I'm not mistaken, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, they're essentially could be defined as a temporary sign. Could they not?
Right, they're a temporary vertical type banner, but you could prohibit those because we don't allow temporary pennants or portable signs or roof signs. One of the other questions I have is duration. We talk about duration, but we don't talk about frequency, and that's another one that we'll talk in a minute. But let's go back to the content one that Tom was talking about, because I've read about it too, and my understanding is it's about to go to the Supreme Court or close to it.
yeah, it is in the Supreme Court, and actually the U.S. Supreme Court. So I'll just give you the quick version. Is that so when Reed came out, that was the case that really made us look at not doing content-based regulations. There was a concurrence in that, where one of the justices said, here's a list of things that municipal bodies can still regulate that are not content-based. And one of the things it was Justice Alito called out was on-premise and off-premise signs. And that always did kind of confuse me, to be honest, that he considered that a non-content-based regulation. So many ordinances across the U.S. have on-premise and off-premise distinctions because of billboards and such. So there was a case brought in the Fifth Circuit, and we are in the Sixth Circuit, the federal courts are divvied up in circuits throughout the United States. And so in the Fifth Circuit, the district court said on-premise and off-premise distinctions are okay. And then it went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was reversed and said, no, that is a content-based restriction. Now, Fifth Circuit law is not precedential on the Sixth Circuit. But then the United States Supreme Court took up the case, and so whatever they do will be, that will be binding on all the circuits. And the case is there, and it's already been, actually, the oral argument's already happened, and we're just waiting for a decision. And as we were working through this, we kind of hoped, the court would have ruled in time for us to know what the answer is to that question. And it just goes to show, the hard questions that come about with sign regulation is, a little old sign case made it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. So the question is unanswered right now. It's hard to predict what the answer will be. The Fifth Circuit has said it's a content-based regulation, but then, when the United States Supreme Court, they don't have to take a case, but they do take a case, it makes you wonder if it's because they disagree with the circuit court, the Court of Appeals. So, the long and short of it is we don't know the status of that yet, and it's pending. The opinion could come out anytime. We don't know, but as of right now, there's no binding case that says off-premise and on-premise are impermissible because it's in the Fifth Circuit, not our Sixth Circuit. So, the options are we could wait and see what the Supreme Court says and make modifications, or we could move forward with this one, and just knowing that if the Supreme Court rules that off-premise, on-premise distinctions are content-based, then we'll have to go back and change it again. I mean, that portion. So that's really the choice to be made concerning on-premise and off-premise. There's nothing banning it right now. We have a circuit court, not in our circuit, who said it's content-based, and we're just awaiting the Supreme Court's decision on that.
Okay, and then the last one I have is regarding the frequency, which would be on page 12, talks placement and duration of temporary signs. We've had this discussion back and forth that right now, the way it reads, it allows somebody to put up a sign every 7 days, but we don't have anything which, because then it basically turns into almost a permanent sign. Is there ability to put duration on a sign, or is that a conflict or a constitutional question?
No, could you point me to the section you're looking at?
Yeah, it's
One more.
On section 1208,
Mm-hmm.
just before 1209, at the top of it, section 6.
I see. Okay, 1 second.
I mean, we have a frequency of 30 days, but that means you could do it every single month, and that seems excessive.
Yeah, so it's 7 days in any 30-day period. And that was the number that was landed on for temporary signs. That's sort of a policy decision, so we could make that something else if there's a concern that that's too frequent.
Now, we've reduced it from, it used to be 2 weeks, didn't it? Maybe not, maybe this has always been 7 days. But generally what was happening was you'd see a sign or a banner sign come back up, it'd come down and be up every single month. And it really was not a sales sign or something like that. It was just a business sign.
What was
Sure.
proposed, Dean?
That it not be allowed more than 3 or 4 times a year, each quarter, maybe 4 times a year.
I'm just trying to go through the other temporary signs to see if that has any unintended consequences as far as other signs that we consider temporary.
Fortunately, make exceptions for a number of like traffic signs and those kind of things. That's in a separate section by itself. But
Yeah,
it's these temporary sale signs and some of these other things that they're just becoming more and more a nuisance. Especially when we allow them monument signs and permit signs, and then they keep putting up another sign just to supplement what they've already been approved for.
sure. Yeah, I mean, on the fly, it looks like that would be okay. I just want to make sure, again, that we don't have any unintended consequences from other temporary sorts of signs.
That's just a recommendation from me, so that's.
Okay.
Oh, and one other last question regarding, it says in here illumination by electrical. Does that just making sure the clarification, if you wanted to use solar to light a sign, does that prohibit that type of use? Because it could include a type of a solar panel or something. Now that we're moving towards renewable energies, an electric sign may not be wired, it could be just solar powered.
Right. And we still want those to be prohibited. I think those are still electrical, though. I mean, it's still producing electricity. It's just coming from the sun instead of, a hardwired line.
But it could change the look of the sign. You may need to put a large panel on it or something in order to power it or next to it.
Sure.
So there might be a definition thing, but
Okay.
again, it could be an appearance thing that may need to be addressed. I know environmental people will be pushing on that issue already.
Okay. I'll make a note of that.
Thank you.
Just on the fly, I'm not sure where we would, I wouldn't want to just throw something in there. I'd want to place it somewhere where it makes sense to address it. So, but I've made note of your concerns.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if there's no additional questions, I'll move to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated January 21st.
Been moved, Mayor Morrow, seconded Heft, to acknowledge the memo dated January 21st. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. There is a motion to open a public meeting.
So moved.
It has been moved, Hart, seconded Heft, to open the public, or
Actually,
Dean, Gearba, I'm sorry, Gearba and Heft. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Any comments from the public?
Move to close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman, at 8:08.
It has been moved, Mayor Morrow, seconded Young, to close the public meeting. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. More comments, questions from Planning Commission members?
This may, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
This may go down as one of our least decisive nights as a board, but in light of Mr. Gearbaugh's comments, but more importantly, what Tom said about a pending ruling from the Supreme Court, it seems logical to me to postpone instead of having to go back and rewrite or modify. Let's just wait until there's a high court ruling. So unless there's objection, I would move to postpone to that same date certain that Commissioner Young proposed in the previous agenda item 2202. So that's February the 23rd.
22nd, 26th. 26th, correct?
26th?
I'm sorry, 23rd.
I got it right, okay, yep. Postpone, so move to postpone consideration to a date certain of February 23rd, 2022. Second.
It's been moved, Mayor Morrow, seconded Carol, to postpone to February 22nd. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it.
And Mr. Chair, would it be the informal consensus of the commission to look into incorporating addressing solar and looking at the duration as far as temporary signs go?
I would believe that's the two. Dean.
That and vertical banner, and vertical
That-
signs, vertical banners, whatever we want to call them.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay, new business, 2404, election of officers. I'm going to refer to Brian here. He's got some ideas.
Yeah, I think Mr. Fosdick has indicated that he would like to, of course, remain on the commission, but relinquish the chair's position. He served with great distinction for the last, has it been 3 years or 4 years?
3 years.
3 years. So we thank you for your service. We look forward to continuing to work with you as a planning commissioner. Following our protocol, I would defer first to our vice chair. She's shaking her head, so she doesn't even need to say any more. Well, let me start with that, Vice Chair Heft. Are you still amenable to serving as vice chair?
I'll do secretary treasurer.
Secretary Treasurer, all right. Well, let me make note of that. Mr. Carroll, let me then defer next to you as the existing Secretary Treasurer. Is the chair position something you're interested in?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Then we would need so,
You want a motion?
yeah, well, actually, let's start with that then. Yeah, I guess I will move then to elect Carroll Chair for 2022.
And I'll second that. Thank you. There is a motion to approve Mr. Carroll as the chairman going forward. Moved by Brian, seconded by me. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Okay,
Well,
we'll move to the next one.
In light of Vice Chair Heft's desire to go down to Secretary Treasurer, I'm always an advocate of empowering, engaging people who haven't served in a leadership role in the past. So I would defer to Commissioner Young to see if she would be amenable to serving as Vice Chair for 2022. Okay, then I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Mayor Morrow, seconded Gearbaugh, to elect Ms. Young as the vice chair. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it.
And I'll finish it up, Mr. Chair, then a motion to elect Cheryl Heft to serve as Secretary Treasurer for 2022.
Second. Second, Young.
It's been moved Brian again and seconded Young to elect Mrs. Heft as Secretary Treasurer for this year. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. Thank you very much. There's also a motion, there's a 22-05, Appointment of Special Projects Commission. We have a motion to appoint Mayor Morrow and Council Representative Dean Gearbaugh to the Special Projects Commission. Is there a motion?
I'll move that. Second?
It's been moved Beardsley, seconded Hart. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. The annual report. There is a motion to accept the annual report with or without amendment. Okay, there's a motion from Heft. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded Hart to accept without amendment the authorized Deputy Chief Richley to forward the 2021 annual report to the City Council. All those in
If I may, real quick,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. Katrina, in light of the fact that council meetings have, we're required now by law to meet in person, I would like to get back to doing presentations at the top of the council agenda for all of our main boards and commissions to provide a 2021 annual report, and I'd like to do that, try to get most of them done in February and March, and maybe one or two in April. Can we try to find a time, maybe at our next meeting or the subsequent meeting, to have Planning Commission provide a verbal annual report and see if we can get both the chair of 2021 and the new chair there? Okay, and I can work with you on that. Okay, very good.
All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, Ayes have it. Let's see, we need a motion to excuse the absence of Mr.,
We actually have one discussion item there.
oh, I'm sorry. Site plan inspections.
I don't really have anything to share from, in addition to what I articulated, I think, 2 meetings back. I think from my most recent conversations with Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh and with the city manager, we'll probably go the route of an RFP, a request for proposal, because realistically, we'll have to engage an outside entity to assist with existing site plan evaluations and inspections. But that is a priority for my office and the city more broadly, and I hope to get that done sometime before the first quarter of 2022.
Bill?
Not related to his comment, so next thing, so.
Go ahead.
Any comments on his?
Comments on that? No, go ahead, Bill.
Only that if my memory serves me correctly, this is the year for our update of the master plan, so it needs to be on our radar somewhere. And that's not an insignificant effort.
Right.
You might have dodged that bullet. As chair, you might have.
Okay. Thank you. Doug?
So with regard to the master plan, there's a couple ways you can go, and I think you probably know this, but if you believe the current master plan is serviceable and represents the desires of the city, all that has to happen is it has to be put on a planning commission agenda, and the planning commission has to make a motion that the current master plan is still valid, and you're basically good for 5 more years. If not, and you want to get into a more, a larger effort, then that's a whole nother story. But it might be worth at, some upcoming agenda to at least put the master plan as a discussion item on the agenda, just for the planning commission to make a determination if it's still valid.
My recommendation, I think that's excellent, Doug, and I think we can add that as a discussion item perhaps at our next meeting. Make sure everyone has a copy of the master plan to review. I think a best practice would be at a minimum, likely this summer, late spring, summer, to have one public open house with our constituents. Sure. At a minimum to gather feedback, but also to inform them, to educate them on what is in our existing master plan. I think that would be a best practice. Now, whether we go take additional steps, I think that would be for this board to determine, but I think at least one public engagement session with maybe a corresponding online survey would be appropriate. And I also wanted to note, too, to piggyback on something that Cheryl said, referenced our motion to table. So I'll work with Katrina if and when a development agreement is finalized and it's appropriate for us to reconsider that issue, but it will take a special motion to take from the table, and similar to the motion that we voted on here tonight, it cannot be amended, and it is not subject to discussion or debate. So once it's appropriately moved and seconded to take from the table, you vote, and it's a simple majority that then brings it to the table for consideration and debate. I just looked that up on Parliamentary Procedure for Dummies.
I did too, so.
Are you calling us?
No, I looked it up on, I'm the dummy. Yeah, I looked it up on Parliamentary Procedure for Dummies. It's actually a great site.
All right, there is a motion to excuse the absence of Mr. Troika.
Second.
It's been moved Young, seconded Carroll to excuse the absence of Mr. Troika. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it. And I'm looking for a motion to adjourn at 8:17. Been moved Gearbaugh, seconded
No,
Heft.
Hart did.
Hart, all right, very good. Hart and seconded Heft to adjourn at 8:17. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you.